So thank you all for joining us. I'm Rebecca Blatt, if there's anyone here I don't know, Assistant Dean. And it's my pleasure to introduce Associate Dean Mark Lodato, one of the candidates for the Dean's position, to give us his vision. And what we mean by that is really, to walk us through how he thinks about the future, what values he'll be drawing on, and, to allow us to project and see forward under a Dean Lodato leadership team. With that, I'll get out of the way and turn it over to Mark.
Thank you, Rebecca, very much. Thank you all for having me here today. And kudos to all of you who are return customers from earlier today. There may be some repetition, but we have plenty of time for your questions and to get into other issues that we haven't addressed just yet. So I appreciate that. And in keeping with my desire to be honest and transparent, I will be transparent with you right now. I'm starting to run on fumes. So I may get just a little bit tired along the way, but I promise I will snap back and get back on track. And to Rebecca's point, looking at a vision, it's a challenging assignment because it is very hard to just see in the future. So my goal today is to give you a little bit of sense of how my brain thinks, what I think the opportunities are for Cronkite and all that entails, and then talk about some of the challenges that we face. And then I'll be looking to continue our rich conversation that has been going on throughout the day in various settings about issues of your concern and whatever I can do to allay any fears of what leadership would look like with me at the helm. So for those of you who haven't heard from me yet today, just a little brief background. I've been in journalism for more than 16 years as a television reporter across the country. And in that time, I always found a way to teach. It was always a lot of fun serving as an adjunct. Many of you may remember Fritz Lee. He hired me as my very first adjunct position when he was a director here at Cronkite. And I literally walked into his office one day and said, "Hey, do you ever hire people to teach?" when I was here covering a story for ABC 15. And it took a year or so, but Fritz finally called and I got my first assignment, and it's really been sort of a love ever since. And as I looked back on it, as I told some of you, I really figured out that ultimately my desire to teach and passion for teaching began with my family. My father was heavily involved at Stanford University. He was on the board of trustees there and was helping that university engage with the community. And as he himself, being a first-generation student, access to education was very important. And I wasn't putting all this together at all back then. But today, I see it, and I love it. And I've taken all of that competitive fire that used to fuel me in chasing down stories for people like Melanie and Heather and others. And now I've turned that energy and enthusiasm really to the higher education space and in a discipline that I love. So as I sat back trying to think about vision and what that might look like, I figured, well, we need to think about who we are and where we are. And that, of course, is Arizona State University. So you are all familiar with this document. This is the charter. And I think about this when I begin to contemplate where we go, where we've been and where we go. So those core values. We're a public research university. We're grounded by who we include and how they succeed. Research and discovery needs to be a very integral part of what we do on a daily and yearly basis. And we have a fundamental responsibility for our community. And that's one of the things I love about ASU and what we do here at the Cronkite School. It's the perfect marriage between what we can accomplish as scholars and as students, but also how we can truly help the community. So I really look back at the charter specifically because I think it grounds us to what we hold dear here at ASU, but it also gives us that pathway and that vision for the future. And that's where I really see us going, and I sort of track back to the charter itself. So as a public research university, as you know, we are obviously in Arizona, and we've got outposts in Los Angeles and in Washington, D.C. But as I look at vision, I look further than that. I want to say, where does Arizona State need to be? If we are the global leader, that means Cronkite is part of that mission. So I would like to look for opportunities to expand our reach. And that can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes, okay? It can come in programs that we might be able to effectively both raise funds for and engage in other communities that aren't fortunate enough to have a large journalism school in their backyard. and it can come in more global experiences for our faculty and for our students. But President Crow's vision is for the nation to view ASU as the national journalism school. So my hope is that together we can realize that vision in phases and grow towards there. But that's a big challenge. And I'm still looking for someone to open the Hawaii Bureau. So if there are volunteers, so we're seeing hands go up already, just let me know, because somebody else has to take the Anchorage Bureau. So, but in all seriousness, I think there are ways, and we've proven that by some of the things we're doing, the Youth Suicide Project and other things that could be replicated both with funding and models to help other communities around the country. And that's one of the things I'm really hoping that we can march towards in concert with Arizona State University. Of course, whom we include and how they succeed, that's a core value. That comes back to our students, right? And the students have to be our top priority. Ultimately, they are the reason and the mission that we are here. So anything we do, any vision we create, needs to be looked through the lens of inclusion, diversity, and equity. So we start with the student body, and how do we accomplish that? It's important to monitor statistics and everything else, but there are soft issues that we have to monitor as well. Equity is not the same as diversity. Okay, inclusion is not the same as diversity. I can look at numbers and see how diverse we are as a student population or a faculty population or staff population. But whether or not you feel included is a much more difficult thing to measure. So it would be critically important to me to make sure that we have systems in place and grow the ones that we have, that students feel at home here in our building. And that's changing all the time because our students are changing all the time. You know, today's student is not the same kind of person we had here 10 years ago. We learned that at the faculty retreat. And our students 5 and 10 years from today are going to be very different also. And we can't be prepared for everything in the years ahead, but we can ensure that the systems we have in place are able to identify that and adapt to that, whether that's first-generation students, whether that's veteran students, whether that is students from Native American communities who have a hard time transitioning into a large space like Phoenix in an urban environment. So we have some specific programs in place that I'm proud to have been a part of over the last couple of years, but I want to make sure that we continue and do more, and we can dive into that further if you would like. Student first and immersion programs, our professional programs. The students come first, but we need those systems in place to ensure their success. And we need students. When you look under the hood of the Cronkite School, this isn't the fun, sexy stuff, but there are expectations. The dean's office is asked to incrementally grow our immersion experiences in our student population. So we have to pay attention to that. How do we recruit students, enable access? What are the outreach things we need to be doing to grow our student population? These are the kind of things Alicia and I work on every day, and we've got some fun new programs in place. We talked earlier today about what we did with Lori and some others about reaching new Native American communities. And I want to expand those sorts of programs because it meets multiple goals. It brings more students into the fold to our experiences. It exposes more people to ASU and Cronkite. And we've built all these amazing professional programs that are really, in many ways, part of the heartbeat of the Cronkite School. But now we have 14, 15 different programs for fighting over all these top students. So let's give you a few more students. We need fuel for that fire. And that's something that's really helpful for growth of our immersion programs in the future. And I think we need to spend some serious time looking at our online programs. They're growing very fast. They're very popular. But that online community is acutely important to us. And that online community is looking to achieve the same level of success as our immersion students. So we have an obligation to provide them the same level of support. And that's in other areas of our program and what we do. And given whether that's a student in crisis, whether that's a student looking for career advice, all those sorts of things, that degree has the Cronkite name on it, just like the degree of the student who crosses our stage. And so in Mark's vision, we are producing and providing that same level of support for those students, and certainly the same level of rigor and consistency and everything else. And of course, student success. I've hammered it on already. Today's students are struggling in a lot of different ways. So what do we need to be doing to improve programs specifically for student success? Mary and her staff do a wonderful job. I'm proud of the way we've grown our advising team to be more nimble in terms of the kinds of things they're able to respond to and the kinds of things they're assigned. I think just like we ask our students to be adaptable to change, I think we as a faculty and staff need to be adaptable also. And we need to be nimble in the way we tackle our jobs. And that's from a faculty perspective as well. You know, what are the classes that we're teaching today? Those are going to change tomorrow and change the next year and the next year. And I think that sort of culture of change and adaptability is hugely important to me as we continue to grow. Research and discovery, obviously important. I take very seriously the passion and desire and frankly obligation to create new knowledge. If you've been to one of President Crow's graduations, you hear him talk about creating new knowledge, and he's absolutely right. And if there is an industry and a sector that needs new knowledge, I think it's media and communication and journalism today. So we need to bring new resources to bear to be able to support that. We were talking about that a little bit earlier today with faculty, trying to identify new research dollars to make sure we have the top researchers in this building and that this is the go-to place for PhD degrees and the like, and look to new funding sources that want to solve problems. We've done great work in recent years with the Facebooks and Googles and others. And what about the Arizona Community Foundation? For the first time, we have a local foundation contributing big six-figure dollars to cover issues in the community. To me, that's a signal that there are more resources like that out there. So I think there are new resources that we need to aggressively tap to support research and discovery, because if we do it right, everybody succeeds. Our researchers are creating new innovative programs and finding new data to work with. Our students are working with them hand in hand. And then in the end, we have new opportunities, new information to share with our communities. So that too is an important piece of the puzzle. And interdisciplinary collaboration. I think there's so much that the Cronkite School can offer other institutions around ASU, other units, and we're not leveraging that to our greatest capability. And I really envision, in essence, a working group that becomes an identified resource for other units around ASU that they can tap. So we've got faculty representation, staff representation, student representation. Phone that team, meet with them from some other unit and see how the Cronkite School can help you. Because then we get a slice of that research pie, right? Those big multi-million-dollar grants that the hard sciences get, we should be able to get some of those opportunities as well. So I think there's real growth opportunities there. So what about the fundamental responsibility for our community? We're doing that very, very well today through all of our professional programs, and I think there's opportunities to grow those as well. But I think we have to be aware of the risks that we're facing and the challenges we're facing in today's world. In the most recent Gallup poll, 51% of people now consider college to be important. That's down from 70% just in 2013. So we need to prove our relevance. And how do we do that? We do that by serving our community and by creating that new knowledge in that research. So I think that's acutely important as we move forward, is ensuring our own success by proving our value to our community. Okay. We have the teaching hospital. That too, to me, is an area of potential growth for us. It's acutely important. When I think about the culture of the Cronkite School and part of what makes us special, it's these hands-on immersive experiences. And I think there are ways to grow those, especially in other locations like Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. We need to put real effort towards expanding those. They all serve different purposes. Los Angeles, as the recruiter in the building, that's a chief driver for us for future students, but it's also where 20% of our student population comes from, and giving them a renewed experience out there broader than what exists today. It's on the drawing board, and we need to make sure that that comes to fruition. In Washington, D.C., I want to be the unit that defends the First Amendment, that is straightforward, upfront, and taking the lead on encouraging conversation within earshot of our nation's leaders about the importance of the First Amendment and a free press. Because this is our time. If we don't step up and do it, then we've let that window close. And for whatever reason, we're all here right now with what's going on in our world, and we can't just sit back and sort of watch that happen. So I would look for opportunities to engage our faculty, even our students, and certainly leadership in coming up with both programs and opportunities to spread the word of why that's important and have the Cronkite name attached to that. Financial strength is always a challenge, and as I look forward, I'm amazed at how much we've been able to do and raise over the years. But as I said to a group earlier today, we've been lucky because for 15 plus years, we've had the immense support of President Crow, Provost Cyril, and others who do believe in the First Amendment, they do believe in a free press, and they've invested in it with us and for us. But we cannot count on that in the future. President Crow likely won't be in office 15 or 20 years from now, let alone 30 or 40. And there are other institutions around the country who aren't nearly as fortunate as we are with that level of support. So I think it's important to begin a next phase of fundraising that looks on building a general endowment that we can use for purposes that we find important. And it gives us an independence. It's almost like an insurance policy. And this is truly a multi-generational effort that we can jumpstart and begin today and build upon our success to date. But if we can do that, that will give us so many more resources in the future and really give us that insurance policy if by some means someday someone took the lead who wasn't as passionate about the things that we hold dear. We can still do the things that are important to us. And that's really a space, while we've done remarkably well in competition with other schools around the country, there are many, many older institutions in other parts of the country that have tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in reserves helping fuel their journalism and mass communication programs. We need to be in that space. And if we start the work here, it may not be all of us in this room, but there will be future generations of faculty and students and staff who are able to take advantage of that. And part of that begins with the cultivation of our alumni network. We've talked about it, we just haven't quite turned the corner on putting more resources towards alumni cultivation and engagement. And what our students are doing out there is amazing. The recent graduates and those who have graduated now 10 or 15 years ago, they are leading media companies, they're executive producers of network newscasts, they're foreign correspondents, and they will do anything for this place. I'm telling you, you call them up and ask them to do a favor, they're there. So we need to set up the network to engage with them and help us across the board, but certainly, ultimately, have them contribute to the Cronkite School as well. So again, I come back to the charter. It not only grounds us in what we've done, but it also, I think, all these elements, to me, points towards what we can be achieving in the years ahead. And it's a really exciting time. So I thank you for letting me give you a little sense of where my head is going, and I really look forward to a rich conversation. So thanks. Okay, there are no, oh, John, okay.
Not so fast. So as the inside candidate, the negative of that is you could be described as the status quo candidate. On the other hand, as we all know, leadership and success is a team sport. Nobody does it alone. You've obviously been a contributor to the success of the school as part of the team. Could you also give us a sense of the formal development programs that you've gone through over on the Tempe campus and, you know, coming out of the corporate world recently? I kind of regard Tempe as our corporate.
Yes,
so,
fair enough.
You know, I knew I was more effective if I was able to persuade headquarters to help. And I do think as an inside candidate, you've likely formed relationships, formal, informal, and know the culture, and you've gone through leadership training at ASU. Can you give us a sense of how that would work on our behalf, given all the aspirations that we have to,
Sure.
to build and grow?
Great question. And the one thing I think that our colleagues in Tempe have done well in the last few years is design leadership growth programs to look to that next generation and be able to see what are we going to do once President Crow retires and Provost Cyril to make sure that this culture and this energy that's been created in the whole university can sustain itself. So I've been fortunate, as have other members of our leadership team, to take part in the Advanced Leadership Initiative, which helps you engage with other high-level leaders across the university and not just hear from them, but pick their brain and work with them. You are assigned a mentor. I worked with Provost Cyril, and seeing how they do their job and interrelate is hugely helpful, especially frankly being on the downtown campus and not being in Tempe every day. That's been very valuable. I also was able to participate in the Scripps Howard Leadership Academy a few years ago, working with leaders who are coming from all across the country who are at that sort of assistant or associate dean level. And I'm excited that many of the people who are in the same class that I was in are deans today, like Diane McFarland at Florida and Lucy Dalgish at Maryland and Susan King at North Carolina. Those are people I can pick up the phone to on any given day and say, hey, it's Mark from ASU, and they're going to know my name, so to speak, and create that connectivity. And you're right, John. I mean, that's been one of the pros and cons of my role is a lot of interaction with the Fulton Center in Tempe, but I can walk into a room, as I did yesterday with 6 of the vice provosts, and we're on a first-name basis. So the advantage to being the internal candidate is on that first day, we can continue moving forward with that level of speed and agility that we become used to because we can get the answers that we need. And you also, frankly, have some institutional knowledge to bring to the table. I can point back to a time when either we were getting what we needed or we didn't get what we needed, and those sorts of things. You don't have to learn from scratch. So I think that's one of the advantages. The disadvantage, of course, is this person just riding coattails? Is he just stepping into some other shoes? And that obligation is on me. Okay, that's me saying I need to make sure that you all understand that Mark has original ideas, and he is ready to lead you down this path together. It's a collaborative process, but I do think the experience of having robust conversations with other areas of leadership around Tempe is hugely helpful, and I feel like that I've become a resource for other units as a Cronkite representative, and that's something we can certainly leverage in the months and years ahead and do so very quickly. Oh, I'm supposed to listen for the mic. There we go.
Hi, Mark. So your presentation included a lot of really interesting, strong, and ambitious ideas for the future. My question would be, where would you put your energies, let's say in the first 30 days? And it's hard to sort of do that with a time frame, I realize. But how would you prioritize those? I mean, we're talking about, bolstering financial coffers,
global
improving
domination.
and broadening. Right, global domination
That's
of
the
the
first
entire
30
Cronkite
days.
school, opening that Hawaii bureau that I will happily be in charge of. How would you prioritize some of that? Where do you think you have to really focus?
It would be a mistake for me, Paulina, to assume that I've got it all down just because I've been in the building 14 years. So regardless of whether I were taking the helm at this institution or another, I would start by meeting and listening, because I think it's critically important that I understand what your challenges are that you're facing, what are maybe some barriers that you've experienced in the past that we didn't realize existed, and where those opportunities might be that simply haven't crossed the third floor yet. I'm not naive enough to believe that I am the only one who can contribute to the vision, right? To me, this is a collaborative process, and that's part of what makes the Cronkite School so good, is that we do listen. So frankly, in the first 30 days, I'll be working the halls. You'll get really tired of me because I'll want to pick all of your brains and see where our opportunities are. But ultimately, our primary responsibility has to be the success of our students. So my first task will be to make sure that we have those systems in place that our students can continue to be successful. And what do I need to do as dean to remove barriers if those barriers exist? So that's really where I would start. But in terms of going down the road, I think it's listening, formulating together with the leadership team so they understand what my expectations are, and then we go. Hey, Peter.
Mark. I wanted to talk to you about fundraising and what your experience has been so far, and do you like it? And that's a good question. And do you have ideas of funding sources that have not yet been even introduced to Cronkite? Like, how do you expand, as you're saying, to Hawaii?
Sure. A few thoughts. Do I like it? Sometimes there are things you may not love, but you can embrace the challenge. So, no, I have no problems raising funds. I don't think you can come into this position not expect the dean to be the champion for fundraising. I need to be the chief development officer of the building. That's got to be a big part of my job, and it's one that I would frankly embrace through the idea of relationships. I look at it as sort of. It's a multi-level challenge. John is doing this over at the foundation. It's establishing relationships, cultivating those, and then finding that intersection between somebody's or an organization's passion and what we can do. And that's sort of a puzzle that you can put together, and I think that's a great challenge, and I do enjoy that. I have had experience working with some of our largest funders. It's not necessarily fundraising and going and say, I want you to do this, but I'm working with the Knight Foundation on our multi-million-dollar grant looking at television innovation. I'll be at their headquarters in Miami in March and sitting down with their leadership, talking about what does it need to continue this for another cycle. So I was fortunate enough to have some interaction with the Scripps Howard Foundation and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and others. So I feel very comfortable in that space. And frankly, if it was something I didn't enjoy, I probably wouldn't have applied for the job, because I know that piece is so important to the future of the Cronkite School, which is really my primary mission. As to new funding sources, I think we're seeing some change, right? We're seeing interesting companies, more technology companies investing in content creation and research and development and communication. So I would want to continue to explore those areas. As I said, I think the alumni cultivation piece is an important area for us to pursue. And I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I think we're on to something with this Arizona Community Foundation investment in coverage of a news issue in their own community. If they're worried about it in Phoenix, Arizona, and don't mind putting hundreds of thousands of dollars to look at youth suicide, I think there are communities across America, if we build a framework for those sorts of projects, that would probably buy in also. Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
So, Mark, I wanted to get your take on a student situation I had recently that I think is indicative of something bigger in the school. I usually teach 201. I've been teaching for 6 years, and lately I've been teaching a community college transfer class version of 201. And those students are very different. Most of them don't, none of them live on campus, right? A lot of them are older. I've had veterans. I have a current student who's 26 who has a 10-year-old, and she works full-time. So Sam and Cornvia came into my class to talk about professional programs last week, I think, and when that student who has a 10-year-old and a full-time job heard that she has to take a professional program that's 16 hours a week unpaid, she's like, there's no way how she could do it, right? This morning you talked about reaching diverse populations and supporting them, so in recruitment and then in money through scholarships, but I think it goes beyond that. So I'm wondering how can you help ensure the success of these non-traditional students that I think we're going to see a lot more of going forward?
Well, I think what we're starting to do is tackle that in a lot of different ways, and I think that's a great example of some of the problems that we're facing today that we didn't expect 10 or 15 years ago. So I take that specific student and I say, we've created a system where they cannot succeed, right, because of the professional program expectation. So we have to make some hard decisions there. Is the system so rigid that we can't look at potentially changing the way we offer that experience? I don't know, but I want to ask the question at the very least. So, for example, when we look at working with the Vice Provost's office, looking at graduation rates, I'm tackling right now those students who may have gotten to junior year, but they didn't graduate on time for senior year. What were those things that stumbled along the way? Sometimes it's the professional program, because of the hours in which they're operated and offered and the amount of time they take. So are there other ways we could ensure that they could get that same experience, but maybe be more flexible in the time that they contribute towards it? I don't know, but it's a question we need to be asking and see what what makes sense within our mission and what we want our students to achieve. So I think that's a crystal clear example of how we need to be addressing the challenges that we're facing of our student body and be open to new approaches. And so I wouldn't expect to have the answer, but my goal would be to pull together the right group of faculty and staff and leadership and say, okay, well, what are the other areas we're finding students stumbling? So maybe it's the student who needs a job or can't work nights because of an issue, so has to work during the day and then can't do the professional program, or doesn't have the funding, wants to go to Washington, D.C., but can't do so because they need to take business in future, and that's only offered on the ground right now. Well, if we look at offering that in an online atmosphere, will that allow more students to take advantage of other of our programs? So to me, we wouldn't be doing our job if we weren't open to change. And Len Downey said it this morning, and I thought he was absolutely right. A good leader knows it's okay to change your mind, right? You can say this was a great idea 5 years ago, but our situation is different. The playing field is different, so let's change. And I would definitely want to take a look at those sorts of cases.
Hi. It kind of goes along the lines of what you were just talking about, just from a different angle. Earlier, you were talking about how sometimes we don't know what the other is doing. There's so much going on at the school that, you know, we don't, like I didn't even know what Central Sound was. And sometimes I talk to my colleagues when we're recruiting for specific types of classes, and there's almost a sense of cannibalism, like we're all fighting for the same small pool of students. So my question is, how do you see handling that when clearly there's one push for the school to continue to grow? How can you conciliate this push for continuous growth without jeopardizing the programs that are already in place, or how might you negotiate this growth and in the structure of the school? I mean, I you know, if you're opening to change, I mean, how far does that go, and how big is too big, almost, you know? I mean,
as a school,
is there even
right.
Too big of a school?
I don't know. At ASU, I don't know. You know, I look at it as I think right now we have room for more. So I think we have room for more students, and if we can hit our mark of about 4% incremental growth on immersion students on an annual basis, that will help so that these amazing programs we have aren't cannibalized by each other. So I do think that we do have room to grow right now, and I don't know where that ceiling is, honestly, but I feel really good about the education that we're delivering to our students, and I feel really good about the students who are coming in the door. We are increasing the academic proficiency with each class naturally. So, you know, the GPA, average GPA is higher, the average test scores are higher. So I think we're on the right track, and so I actually want to sort of be a little more aggressive in our recruitment efforts, especially when, in terms of marketing and competing. Again, I love to compete, and I don't like to lose, and that means good students too. So I would love to have certainly a large enough student body that we can feel we can offer these professional programs with confidence. And if we have to make a change, we're making a change for academic reasons rather than numbers reasons, okay?
I think I've got the mic. I'm going to play White House Press, and I'm going to do two questions at once. Here we go. How are you not like Chris Callahan? And what would you ask Walter Cronkite if he came to you in one of your dreams?
Well, great, yeah, thanks. How am I not like Chris Callahan? That's a very delicate question. Because the first thing that pops in my head, I'm not going to say. No, obviously, Chris and I have a lot of similarities because we've known each other for a really long time. I would say that I am probably more of a delegator than he is. I think because we're trying to do so much and the dean needs to be looking around the corner and down the road, that I would probably be inclined to spread the wealth a little bit more. And Assistant Dean Silcock, you may or may not like that. But I think that's where we need to grow if we want to, that's where we need to go if we want to grow in this way that we're talking about. And I do think that I'm certain, and this isn't something that Chris isn't doing, but I think I have a habit of coming back around. In other words, I'm not going to be one who says, oh, that didn't work way back when, so we're taking it off the table. I think I'm very attuned to how we're in a changing environment, both in the building and outside of the building, and I feel very flexible, and I want to really reassure that the administration is viewing things that way. Some things that I think Chris has fostered that are really good is a culture of success, especially in the leadership space, and understanding what it takes to get everybody on board and be collaborative. I think something that we should all feel very proud about is that every major degree program, every major vote we've brought before the faculty committee in 12, 15 years has been a unanimous vote in the affirmative. That doesn't happen in other institutions, and that means we're doing something right, and that's getting people on board, addressing questions early on, and then unifying behind that goal. And so that's the sort of culture that I want to create. And if Walter, what was it, Walter, if he appeared in my dreams, what would I ask him? I mean, I guess I would simply, I would ask him for advice, frankly. I mean, I would say, yeah, what are the, if I'm the dean, I'm going to ask him a dean question. I'm going to say, what are the qualities that make for good leadership in defending the First Amendment and democracy today? How about that? I'll go with that.
I have a question right here. Mine's somewhat of a follow-up to Fernanda's question, and I'm really excited for all the projected growth of the school and also of our beautiful building, and that's, you know, home for professional programs, classes, and lots of events. So with that, how do you see the building itself changing to adapt to all of the growth that's projected? Are we building a 7th floor?
Yes,
I'm just kidding.
We're building the basement gym and the 7th floor pool. That's complete joke, whoever's listening online or zooming in. We are not doing that. Well, I think we need, honestly, Paulina, I think we need more adaptable space, right? I mean, I'm amazed at how well this building has served our needs, and I was privileged enough to literally have impact on the design of the building. It was a scary time because we were making really fast decisions, but 99% of it I think worked out really, really well. I'm still irked and frustrated by the terrace up on the 6th floor newsroom. That was supposed to be a balcony, and it bothers me every time. But I think we need more flexible space. I look at like what some of the spaces the law school has designed that can be classroom space, but also could be more adaptable to different kinds of experiences and teaching models. Random thought, like classroom 314. I think we can redesign that to be more flexible in ways that can do mid-level size projects. And I like where we're going in that we are sort of the go-to in the living room and the center for discussions about media issues and First Amendment and those sorts of things. So I think we need to make sure that we're addressing those concerns. And as it happens to event space and events plural, I mean, we put a lot of pressure on your team's shoulders. And I think we need to manage that growth. If we're going to continue to grow, we need to make sure that we're bringing the resources to be able to support those programs and also communicate across the teams. Like Chris, I walk around the building and there's little things that sort of bug me, you know. There's a couple paint colors I want to change, and stuff like that. But I mean, I think we have a beautiful building, but we need to ensure that it is adaptable and is able to change along with the environment. And like that's a great place for input, right? Getting input from faculty and students on, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? So that to me is part of the listening job of the dean and the administration, so that we can ensure that our spaces and our resources are meeting the needs in the future.
And piggybacking off of that, the building was built 15 years ago, and media has changed. How do you feel in your leadership you've adapted to that change in an age of disruption? And how do you feel that you'll embrace that disruption, ensuring that students leave the building in a position to succeed?
Sure. I think we've adapted well over the years. I think where I see the greatest challenge, Andrew, is sometimes and it's happening in other spaces, but I see it most acutely, the best example is up on the 6th floor with Cronkite News, because we literally have a great group of faculty and students that are doing innovative things, but we also have, and they're disrupting, but we also have corporations that say, that's great that you're innovating so much, but I still need reporters who can do X, Y, and Z tomorrow when they walk in the newsroom, which is frankly the same way we were doing it when I was a reporter 20 years ago. So that's where the real challenge is to me. But I think when I think about disruption, I look at, frankly, at all of you. I can't, as the dean, believe that I'm going to always be the one who knows where the disruption needs to happen and where it is happening. And that's, if we've got the right people on the bus, so to speak, then that's where we're getting that information. So that's listening. That's listening to Arizona PBS. That's listening to our students and faculty and all of us who are media and news consumers, and identify those ways that we need to stay cutting edge. The beauty of our curriculum, I think, and the changes that all of you, many of you took part in 15 years ago now, when we broke down the silos and marched forward with just journalism and now sports journalism, it's a very adaptable curriculum. So I feel good that we're able to make those changes quickly. And I think that's one of the things we're pretty good at, is adaptability when it comes to curricular design. It still may feel slow, but trust me, it's lightning fast compared to some other units on campus.
Hi again, Mark.
Hi, Hazel.
About a year ago, I had a chance to talk with one of the alumni. She was from Korea, South Korea, my home country, and she got degree from Cronkite School. She went back home, and she got a job. But what she said to me was she was disappointed in the sense that Cronkite School's name value was not as competitive as it appears to be in the U.S. So what she meant was, and partly I agree with her view, is that I cannot speak for all countries, but at least those several East Asia countries that I know, unfortunately, Cronkite School's feasibility is not as competitive as those who we think competitors, for example, one in LA, other in Chicago, or other in Missouri, and other in Texas, So I'm just wondering if, we do have a Humphrey Fellow, all these programs, but I'm just wondering if you might have any vision to increase our competitive value or visibility in an international scope.
Mm-hmm. I think that's sort of that's a generational advancement. In other words, if you look at ASU's reputation for a long time, and I don't think it's this way now, but it wasn't that long ago, ASU's reputation quantifiably was stronger outside of Arizona than in Arizona. That's because, what did everybody think of Arizona State 30 years ago? Those are now the parents and everything else, and that's what they think about, whereas outside, everybody was hearing about ASU and what an amazing place it was. But we were having a hard time convincing in-state students that this was the best option for them, while we get 60% of our students from out of state. And I think in some ways, that tracks with the challenge that we're now facing. We're a relatively young institution producing at the quality that we have been for the last 15 years. So to me, what that sounds like is that's sort of a marketing and promotion challenge. So I think it's championing all the things that we're doing, the projects that our students are doing, the awards that we win, the research that we do, and then working with Chris Fiscus and the communications team and saying, what do we need to do to get those successes in front of those students to get them to come to the Cronkite School? Do you have the mic? We're supposed to follow the mic. I'm sorry.
Speaking of follow-up, I think this follows Hazel's question in some respects. You've mentioned, Mark, this notion of being the go-to institution for journalism and journalism education. And I'm wondering if you can maybe think out loud a little bit in terms of how that is achieved. And I ask this realizing that in some ways everything you've said today maybe speaks to that, but maybe more directly how that might be achievable.
To be the go-to. So when I'm saying go-to, I'm talking about really from a research and investment funding perspective, and sort of whether it's Facebook or Google or Knight Foundation, to create a track record of success so that they know their dollars are going to be spent so wisely here that they want to keep coming back here. So, and bring those dollars to bear to do things like the Knight Foundation grant or News Collab or those sorts of things.
If I can follow up,
Sure.
maybe to clarify what I'm after is, I'm thinking more in terms of go-to when expertise is sought by the media, for
Yes,
example.
I'd love to do that.
Whoever it might be, and the first thing they think of is, let's turn to the Cronkite School.
Yep, I would love to be more aggressive in that space. I think that's critical. Those need two things, right? They need connectivity, so we have to make sure that that's quick and easy, something that we can accommodate from the building, or frankly from anywhere at this point with the kind of resources that are out there from a technology perspective. And then again, I hate to put all this on Chris Fiscus, but I think we need to champion. We need to make that a priority and make sure that our people and what they can discuss are readily available and top of mind. And frankly, I think in part that's a marketing piece, but then, like I was talking about earlier, imagine a more robust operation in Washington, D.C. So when we opened the building in D.C. a couple years ago, Len Downey chaired this amazing panel talking about reporting in the nation's capital, and we had the whole place filled up, and it was on C-SPAN. And you know, that's the kind of thing that brings great attention to Cronkite and to ASU. I mean, we should be doing those sorts of things every month. Don't tell Len I said that. But I think those are the sorts of things that would help elevate Cronkite in the national conversation. And, you know, I talk about looking for, frankly, physical places to advance our reach. I don't know. You know, New York is a short distance from Washington, D.C. Is there a collaborative opportunity where we could have more of a presence? So we're on the Sunday talk show circuit on CNN talking about media issues and those sorts of things. I don't know. But I think that's important. I think that helps build our brand, and it helps ensure our success in the future and be that go-to at all levels, right, for students and funders and everything.
Is the dean job also going to be the CEO of Channel 8 as well, like it is now?
Honestly, I don't think that's been exactly decided yet. I think there's different directions we can go with that. I certainly enjoy my interaction and work with Arizona PBS, so I would want to be acutely involved in that process. But I guess I would say I'm not sure. I have not been told if that's Provost Cyril's plan or not. So, but I think to speak to Arizona PBS specifically, I think that is a tremendous resource, and we've made great progress in the last couple of years. Programs like Catalyst and others, and all PBS NewsHour being collaborative in the building. I love those sorts of opportunities where we can move more things under our roof and watch that organic collaboration begin. And I think Arizona PBS is a really important part of that, and we've made great progress in the last couple of years, and we've got a lot more things dialed up.
I just wanted to add a couple of things based on the conversation happening. I think for example, ASU has I believe one of the best ASU has the online programs. So there is a lot of opportunity in this, which is, I think, untapped. And there is a lot of opportunity in it to get the funding to go online internationally.
Okay.
So over a period of years, like 4 or 5 years, the number of enrollment from international to US has actually declined because of so many issues going on. And I think ASU and our institute is very rightly positioned to go into this direction. Foundations like Robert Wood Johnson are also interested in looking into issues which are internationally, but they have some influence into US. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of funding, monetary and human resource, and a lot of good opportunity right there to place the Cronkite School internationally, to get the funding, to serve people, and to improve its image using the online programs.
I think that would be terrific, and what we could do is we could bring in the expertise of Ed Plus and make sure that aligns also with the goals of of the institution as ASU specifically expands globally. I think it's important as one of the crown jewels of the university to make sure that we're helping lead in those different spaces. So I think I could definitely see opportunities for that, and I'd love to talk more in that first 30 days of listening, right?
Hey, Mark. Hey, everybody. You touched on the really flexible curriculum just a few points ago, and that's something that's really dear to me as a Cronkite grad. I was in the cohort before we were direct enroll, and unfortunately, I was never able to explore radio or audio or magazine writing as much as I really wanted to because I actually had gotten grandfathered out of, I think it was 301 back then. And I understand there's got to be core curricula. Absolutely, I get that, but can you talk to more about opportunities to have a exploratory curriculum at the early stages for all fields of not just journalism, but the mass comm side too, as you know, Maya Love at the PR Lab?
No, I think we can certainly work at that. I think our challenge is we have so many wonderful classes that it gets back to something we were talking about a little bit earlier, making sure we have the student population to fill those classes. So we can certainly look at creating sort of topical issue stories or I don't know, we could sort of brainstorm and make available. I think one of the reasons that students come to the Cronkite School, and I think they would agree, is because you get the hands-on experience at such an early stage. And so I think if there's ways that we can do that without sort of jeopardizing other expectations of the degree program or accreditation, all those sorts of things, I would love to create more opportunities like that. I think, you know, we built those couple one-credit programs up on the 6th floor for freshmen, but to your point, there's other areas of the building where we probably could be doing something very similar that gives a different sort of experience. Maybe we can come up with, in essence, a 3-credit bundle of 1-credit courses that get you different exposure in different corners of the building as a freshman. That'd be kind of fun. Cool, good idea. Are we getting to the end? Any other questions? How much time do we have? We
got 10 more.
10 minutes? I mean, you don't want to hear me talk for 10 straight minutes, do you? I can. Yes, oh God. All right, Paula's got a question.
Shockingly, it's about sports,
Yes.
but and I know you addressed this a little bit, but there's been so much talk about this incoming class and 40% or whatever interested in. What's that? 40%
Growth?
No, as far as interest in sports journalism.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. So
40% increase in enrollment. That would be.
Oh God.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. I just wondered what kind of emotion that triggers when you hear those numbers about sports.
No, I talked about this a little bit earlier, and I think it's important because it speaks to the larger sort of culture and feel of the building, right? And sports has changed that a little bit. We've had an influx of a different kind of student and predominantly male, and we're sensing a little bit of a shift. And so to me, we want everyone to feel a part of the curriculum and engage with it and feel included in who we are and what we're about. So to me, in my mind, it's not, we don't want to somehow reduce opportunity for students to study sports journalism at Cronkite, right? That would be antithetical to the ASU mission and the Cronkite mission. So I look at it as, okay, what do we need to do to counterbalance? So the example I used before, and I'm still trying this, is I approached Awesome, the Women in Sports Media organization, and said, why don't you bring your headquarters to the Cronkite School? You know, let's become the go-to place for women interested in sports media and build up those numbers and get back to that equilibrium rather than to say, what do we do about all the guys, right, or whatever. So that's how my brain works in those sorts of challenges, is not to somehow decrease what we're offering to someone else, but what else do we need to be doing to find that balance again moving forward and then be aggressive in that regard.
Following up on that question about sports, I'll ask a similar question about our online students, which I think soon will surpass the number of on-campus students we have. And those students aren't journalism majors, and they're not in our traditional sequence of curriculum. So what does that mean for, does that have an impact on who we are and the identity of the Cronkite School to be in a place where more than half of our students aren't in the building and aren't studying journalism?
Well, it does, and that I touched on that a little bit earlier. I think we need to ensure that online population is getting that same level of service, certainly, as a student population, that same level of rigor in the academic academic experience. And then if we do that, then what we're doing is we're ensuring that the brand is equal, right? If you walk out with a Cronkite degree as an online student, it is just as valuable as the degree from crossing the stage. And that would be my goal. So if we need to be doing different things to be able to keep pace with that growth, then I think that's worth our time and investment. Peter, I'm excited to announce that that honor would go to Assistant Dean Rebecca Blatt. So next up, right? That's how it goes. So let me wrap just by saying this has been a wonderful experience going through this process. I love this place, and it would be truly my honor to be able to lead in the next generation. And it's, but I also know that we've built a great culture that will be wonderful no matter who's in these shoes, so to speak. So thank you very much for your time and engaging with this with me. And if you have any follow-up questions or certainly concerns, never hesitate to reach out. It's certainly a time for change, which brings uncertainty, but I'm so confident in people and systems that we've put in place that there's just simply nothing but success in our future. So thank you.